So yeah, Lenny's 17 now. He's 17 a few weeks ago. And I've got Mimi, who's 19 at uni in London, and Betsy, who's 24, who's out in the world working now.
So we first met in deepest, darkest lockdown. We met in, I remember it so well. The timing was pretty bleak time in the world.
It was,
December 2020.
Yeah. When we were back in to that again, weren't we? And it was starting to feel quite sort of, we were all getting a bit despondent, weren't we? And our children, you know, winter, lockdown. And I mean, for Lenny, lockdown was a disaster for his education. I'm sure a lot of parents will agree. With Lenny, you know, I mean, the school were good at saying, look, you know, don't stress. You know, he'd just gone into year 9 at an upper school because we're in the 3-tier system here. So yeah, it was like he'd only been at school 6 months or so, wasn't it? March 2020. And it was obvious. Lenny struggled at school anyway. So then being left to just me. And the weed smoking had really taken hold.
Yeah.
That sort of in between lockdown summer, when they were starting to have a bit of freedom again, summer 2020, was when I really noticed that it was like, oh, okay. They didn't have anything else to do, you know. It was like suddenly, you know, Lenny went from, you know, boxing, swimming, parkour, gym, he was out most nights, you know, doing something, skating, and you know, it just all disappeared. And I saw him shrink from this quite beefy, muscly boy. He sort of shrank, like, you know, just in size, just from being so stuck at home. And and it's like when they could go back to being out again, all those clubs and sports, you know, it was all gone. So, and I think even the skate park was closed for quite a long time, so they didn't even have that. So it felt like suddenly they were sort of, you know, hiding in the woods smoking weed, and that became their pastime. That's why his time with you was so important, because I remember feeling at the time how much, you know, he was in need of having a man in his life in some way who can show him, you know, that it's so, you know, the sort of wholesomeness of working, and, you know, having someone around, you know, who can sort of encourage him with his education, who's also a man, was powerful. You know, we went from, like, you know, him partying once or twice a week, coming home, getting into bed, you know, that horrible feeling when you look at, you're like, oh, he's in a bit of a state, he hasn't slept. You know, suddenly he's come back and he's not touching anything, he stayed completely sober. And I said, well, what happened? You know, he said, Mum, I don't know, but they just taught me to love myself. He said, I just feel like I want to look after myself, I feel like I'm worth something.
Wow.